Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Earrings Off. We want to invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. You can find us on Facebook at Earrings Off Podcast and on Instagram at The Earrings Off Podcast.
Welcome to Earrings Off. I'm Lou.
And I'm Teresa. Let's get started.
We are doing our community table on self-care today. And we are, of course, excited. We are going to have some ladies join us, and we will introduce them to our audience later. But I wanted us to just chat a little bit about self-care so that we can sort of prepare. So first of all, self-care is the practice of taking an active role in protecting one's own well-being and happiness, in particular during periods of stress. So self-care is one of those things that's essential, but we often don't take time for or feel we don't have time to take out for that.
But taking care of yourself, your body, health, and mental well-being is so important to not just feel better, but also to perform better in the long run and to better be able to help others.
You know, that's so true because, you know, you and I talk about, and we've used that example of us being on the plane and them telling us to take, to put on the oxygen mask first. And so for us to take care of ourselves, to take care of others, we've got to make our own self-care a priority. So we have to start thinking about self-care as not being a selfish act. Parker Palmer says self-care is never a selfish act. It is simply good stewardship of the only gift I have, the gift I was put on earth to offer to others. And when I saw that, I just thought about, wow, we are to be good stewards of our own health and well-being. And so that's what self-care is. It's taking care of our own, ourselves that we consider, well, that's a blessing. It's just like anything else we get. Mm-hmm. We like to, if we get a physical asset, be it a house or a car, we're all about taking care of that. Well, this is our body. This is our temple, and we're to be good stewards of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And, you're right in saying that it's never a selfish act.
No, it's not.
It's not a selfish act. It's a responsibility.
Yeah, but so often,
and I like that.
Yeah, but so often, it's particularly as women, we've been taught that it's selfish to do that, and very self-indulgent.
I don't know if we've been taught to feel that it's self-indulgent. I think as women, we tend to make excuses. Really? Or we apologize for, thinking of ourselves because we're always taking care of someone else. But what we have to realize is that if we don't put ourselves first, we can't, take that mask and put it on someone else. You know what I mean?
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I want to share a quote, Lou, from Dr. Kristen Neff. She's a researcher at the University of Texas. She said, I found in my research that the biggest reason people aren't more self-compassionate is that they're afraid they'll become self-indulgent. Mm-hmm. They believe self-criticism is what keeps them in line. Most people have gotten it wrong because our culture says being hard on yourself is the way to be.
Wow. Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Yeah.
what we're saying. But you know who says it so well though
Who's that?
is I'm going to go back to one of my favorite motivators, Rachel Hollis.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she wrote the book that you told me about.
Yeah.
Girl, stop apologizing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that book is all about self-care
Yeah.
and not and being and doing so unapologetically, you know.
Right. Right. Right.
It's a great story behind her
Yeah.
if you get a chance to check her out.
Well, that's true. But when I think about that, what you just said, I saw a quote or something the other day which says, stop saying to Black women, "You're so strong. You're so strong. We're strong." And the person was saying, that's almost offensive because it keeps telling us we have to be strong. And if we aren't strong and we can't, just man up through every situation, then somehow we're weak. And, there's nothing worse than a weak Black woman. And so the person was saying, we have got to move beyond that as seeing that as some type of badge of honor to say that we're so strong, because it does not allow us to have moments of vulnerability, to say, I'm struggling right now, I'm dealing with some issues, and to be honest in our relationships so that we can get the support that we need. So that sort of resonated with me. A quote that really, I'm telling you, it spoke to me was one by Andrew Matthews. And he says, a healthy self-love means we have no compulsion to justify to ourselves or others why we take vacations, why we sleep late, why we buy new shoes, why we spoil ourselves from time to time. We feel comfortable doing things which add quality and beauty to life. And that is so important, because when I read that, I thought about and this is not to cast, negativity on anyone that does this, but I have always found it odd, and I guess people use it for a comic effect when women, may go out and buy things and then they're hiding them in the car, in the trunk of the car, and slipping them in the house. And years ago, I felt like I'm never going to do that. That diminishes me as an adult woman. I will make my choices and I will live by those choices. And if someone has an issue with that, then we're going to have to talk about that. And maybe there are some changes I need to make or not make. But what's not going to happen is I'm going to hide my choices. And so when I saw that just made me think about how we sometimes will try to hide what we need. And because we are so afraid of the judgment. And that's something that I thought about when I saw that. Yeah.
Well, that is a good segue into this that I found.
Mm-hmm.
There are days I drop words of comfort on myself like falling leaves and remember that it's enough to be taken care of by myself.
Wow.
Brian Andreas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're kind with other people. We struggle to find the right words to say to people so we don't hurt them, but yet we let negative things enter our minds about ourselves. And so that's important to say, that the part about speaking words of comfort to ourselves. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, I think it's okay for us. I think with self-care, it is what it means. Of course, you shared the definition at the beginning, but at the core of it, you're acknowledging that it's okay. It's okay to be dealing with something.
right.
It's okay if you're tired or if you it whatever that stressor might be. It's okay. You acknowledge that, and then you do something to take care to make yourself feel better.
Right.
You know?
And, Teresa, I want us to end with a thought about self-care is not just vacations and bubble baths and treating yourself to a pedicure.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes it can be seen as a negative when you make hard choices, difficult choices, because you know they're the right choice for you. So Kim McMillan says, when I loved myself enough, I began leaving whatever wasn't healthy. This meant people, jobs, my own beliefs and habits, anything that kept me small. My judgment called it disloyal. Now I see it as self loving. I'm just going to let that sit there for a
Mm,
minute. Yeah.
yeah, I really, I really like that. That quote reminds me of something you said in a previous podcast. I can't remember what we were discussing, but you'd made it might have been for your goals for 2021, and you were saying that you were going to say no to some things if it didn't sit right with it, if it didn't sit in with what you had planned for yourself. You were going to
Yeah.
have the courage to just say, no, that's not going to work for me today.
Yeah. Yeah.
you and be okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what that reminds me of. Yeah.
And the hard one for me that I've been challenged with throughout my life is to say no to beliefs, things we've been taught, we grew up with, um, that we were surrounded by as being things that we should ascribe to. But being willing to
Hmm.
challenge those for myself when I know in my spirit, nah, that just doesn't sit well with me. That's not working for me. So,
Right.
that's
Right.
part of self care. And that's going to be our topic during today's conversation, our community table on self care. Get ready to listen in. Okay, we're here today. It's an exciting day for us. We're here for the Earrings Off Community Table on Self Care. And Teresa and I are excited. We keep saying when we get some money for this podcast and get a decent budget, we're going to have all kinds of bells and whistles and horns going off and balloons falling when we announce the community table. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
But while we don't have all the bells and whistles, we continue to be tremendously blessed by people who are willing to give of their time to come and talk with us
That's right.
when we ask them to sort of come in and share their knowledge, their wisdom, their experience. And so today is no different. We've sort of hit the jackpot. We have with us today four accomplished women, all accomplished in their very area, in their various roles. And we have with us, of course, we have Teresa, the co-host of Earrings Off, and we also have Kelli, we have Wendy, we have Kim, and we have Dian. And so we are thrilled that they are here to talk with us a bit about self-care. And so we're going to start today by sort of stating the obvious. We're in a pandemic. We've got virtual school going on. There's a lot of social unrest, too many Zoom meetings. I was on a Zoom call last night, and one of the ladies said, I think she'd had maybe 87 in the last year. And I was like, oh my
Wow.
goodness. She was like, I've been counting them, and that's how many I've had.
Mm,
And so, of course, during this time, we're all under additional stress and for women
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
particularly. And so our hope today in today's community table is that this discussion will just be us talking about how to take care of ourselves, because we know that for us to be effective as moms and wives and partners and professionals and engaged members of the community and daughters and aunts and all of that, for us to be effective, we
Mhm.
have to take care of ourselves. And Teresa and I talk about this quite a bit. The example that we like to use is, when you're taking a flight and the flight attendant tells you to make sure that you put on your oxygen mask first, so that you then are able to help any minors or someone who requires help in getting their mask on. So that's what this is about, this discussion today. And so our hope is that the conversation will, in some way, provide you some information on what self-care looks like. Everybody's different. It may look different ways for different people, but we're excited about today's conversation. And we just hope that you're excited and your interest will be piqued a bit to listen in.
Okay, let's get started. First, I want to hear from each of you on what it is exactly. What is self care to you specifically?
So self-care to me is, I count it in minutes. It's
Mhm.
the time that I take to really fill my own cup. I know you guys use the example of flight attendants, but I'd like to use the example of kind of coming to the table full. And,
Mm.
everything during the day, whether it's virtual schooling, it's virtual working, it's, you know, all of life that's happening during the pandemic, it takes away from your cup. And so you have to find ways to be able to fill yourself back up so that you can then give back to others. And so, that's really what self-care is to me. It's finding ways to replenish, refresh, reflect, and fill myself.
Oh, I love that analogy, Kim.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's
That's great.
haven't heard that one. That's a great one. Thank you for
yeah,
sharing that.
yeah. I like
I have
that.
to shamelessly borrow.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, it is similar, and I think of it as a time to re-energize. Oftentimes, I can tell when to use Kim's analogy, when my cup, I guess, is getting empty, I feel it in terms of an energy drain. And I know that's when it's time when I definitely need to step aside, step away, and do something that makes me happy, that brings me joy, and then therefore allows me to be re-energized. And then I can be of better service to, family, friends, etc.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, following behind both of the ladies' great descriptions, I agree totally. And I find that working from home takes so much out of me that, I really need to take time, if not, it would be nice if it was daily, but at least sometime during the week, just to focus in on recharging, doing the things that I like so I can, do well at work, be here for my family. But if I'm not taking care of myself, I can't fulfill the needs of others that I interact with.
Okay.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. And Dian?
So I was thinking about it very literally. Like I do three things for myself. And I've found them to be incredibly essential in the last year as we're approaching March. And that is that I do physical exercise to maintain my health. That doesn't just do my physical health, it also helps with my mental health.
Yeah.
Then napping. I'm a mother of two small children, and my 5-year-old still does not sleep through the night. So I am a big proponent of naps.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a 20-minute shut my eyes just so that I have enough to keep going. And then the third thing is extending grace to myself. It's something that I've been practicing. Because I feel like we are really, really good at extending grace to others. When a girlfriend calls or your mom calls or somebody else, and you say, cut yourself a break, give yourself a minute. Like, it's okay, girl, and we're always telling other people to extend themselves grace. But how often do we extend that grace to ourselves?
Right.
And so I've been really working hard at practicing extending grace to myself and saying, you know what, It's okay that I didn't meet that high standard that I set for myself as a mother today. It's okay that I didn't get everything done on the to-do list. It's okay.
Yeah.
Cut yourself a break, girl.
It's okay.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
That is so true, because Teresa and I were talking when we were talking about doing this segment, that when something happens with our friends, or we see them going through something difficult, we try so hard to make sure we're careful how we communicate with them, and that we say the right things to support them and let them know, I'm right here with you. No, you're doing great. But yet we don't take the same time to speak those words of comfort to ourselves and healing in ourselves, to ourselves, and so we need to do a better job of that. I know I certainly do. The same care that I show to others, the same love and support that I need to make sure, just as you just said, Dian, to extend that same grace to myself. So that's powerful, because many times when I think, and we talked about, Teresa and I talked about this, I don't know if it's cultural, but our environments growing up, that we're sometimes taught as women that it's selfish to talk about self-care. And many times it's almost like you're told constantly you have to be the strong Black woman, and to not be seen at that. The opposite, of course, is that you're weak, and there's something wrong with that, and self-care somehow indicates a weakness, that we've sort of fallen down on the battlefield, if you will. And that's not it. It's about us making sure we have what we need, what Kim said earlier, making sure our cup is full so that we can function and care for ourselves and care for others. So with that, I want to talk about, do the others with whom you're in relationship, be their husbands, partners, family members, children, do you think they recognize the importance of self-care, or that you take care of yourselves?
I can start. I think for me, those around me do recognize the importance of self-care, but I think it's surely been a journey. Lou, when you talked about, the culture that we've been brought up in, having to be, super women.
Yeah.
Coming to the table, like any sign of rest is a weakness.
Right.
Any sign of pause is a weakness. And so, for me, my family is very supportive of me taking a minute, taking a step back, and they encourage that. But it's surely been a journey that I had to unlearn things that I had learned over the years, and it had continued to be reinforced as you go to work, or as you become a mom. The stereotypes of being a super mom, and being able to do it all, and to be everywhere and everything to everyone. Those things aren't. You have to understand what's important. What's important to you? What do you value? And then that's where, and caring for yourself is a part of that.
Right. Yeah. That's so true. Well, Kim, let me ask you about that, because I know you just finished your MBA. And so how were you able to manage all of that, in addition to your full-time role and, your mom, wife, and all your other responsibilities? Was self-care a part of that to actually allow you to achieve that goal?
Lou, it was critical. And that's where I say, I learned the journey of self-care over time, because I found myself in places where I was pushing past what I would have initially thought was possible. Being a full-time working mom, having a husband and 3 kids, and, and life that's happening, and saying that I was going to go back and get my MBA, was a daunting thought. But, the things that got me through that was, one, my husband was super supportive, and he was my cheerleader along the way, and was willing to help and kind of pick me up when I needed somebody else to pick me up. And he gave me grace when I needed self-care to be able to take a step away, have a spiritual moment, have a moment of, just quiet time. And so, those are the things that got me through, being able to, like I said, kind of take a step away, in ensuring that was part of my week, because it was the only way that I was going to get through, everything that I was going through. And so I just think that, it's absolutely critical. I think that some of the things that we try to achieve, are, if you're not caring for yourself, that's where you fall.
I agree. Yeah. So, Wendy, can you tell us about, what about your support? Do others recognize the importance of self-care, you think?
Being in a house full of men, I'm not sure that they really recognize the importance of self-care. And especially when it comes to, wife and mother, they just take it for granted. We just have that energy and we're always there and ready to do things for them. But, I just make sure that I have to take time for myself. I have to recharge. If I need to get a massage, if I need to, provide a pedicure now, of course, for myself, because I don't go out for it, but just things that make me feel better so that I can, be supportive and do whatever it is that is needed to help my family. But no, I don't think, being in a house full of men, they recognize.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Kelli?
I can see, I think that I'm very blessed. I have a very supportive husband. I'm also a mother of three. Currently, my oldest son is back here living with us thanks to the pandemic. And it was funny, just this morning as I was preparing for the call and setting up my laptop, he said, "You have a Zoom call this morning?" He said, "Mom, like when?" Right? He said, "You're retired, but you are the busiest retiree I've ever met. I don't understand. Like, when will you have a day to yourself?" You just need to take the time. And I appreciated that he recognized that. And my husband as well is always very, supportive, and, it's like, sit down, you don't have to do that right now. You don't have to answer that call. Tell them to go away. And so that makes me feel really good. And that takes, but I had to kind of also myself get to a point where I didn't personally feel the guilt, that I could take a moment and sit down and not think about all the other things that I felt like I needed to be doing that had to be done, that it was okay to take the time for myself. And that made the difference. Like, I do a daily power walk. And it started out that I was walking, but while I'm walking, I'm making the mental to-do list of things I've got to do when I get back to the house. Well, then it's not benefiting me if I'm not focused just on me while I'm walking.
That's right.
So I stopped doing that. So I listen to podcasts like Earrings Off, and other, music, my favorite playlist. And I really make it about me for that, 45 minutes to an hour. And it just makes a difference, all the difference when I come back. So,
wow.
But I can't say I am lucky in having that support.
Well, you know what? When you mentioned being retired, I'm retired as well. And I don't know if this happened to you, Kelli, but when I retired, I struggled with, when I talked earlier about, the culture and feeling like you have to be this strong woman, I felt guilty that I had time to myself. And I think some of that was, it's just we've been taught you have to be productive and you have to be doing something, and how selfish are you? And so that was a piece that I had to unlearn in all of this, to sort of settle into that. It's like, it's okay. And I think that in a way is, you can tie that into self-care, because we've been taught that, what is it? You can't be idle. That's almost a sin. And you see, we're taught to see self-care as being idle or being selfish when that's not what it is. So, yeah. And Dian, what about you? Have you felt that others recognize the importance of self-care?
Yeah, I too am very blessed to have a husband who is incredibly supportive. And he is the one who pushes me the hardest and cheers the loudest, but is also the very first one to say, you need a break.
Oh, wow. That's
nice.
Or if he calls on his way home from work and he can hear that tone in my voice that lets him know the kids have worn me out, he stops for a bottle of wine on the way home.
Yeah.
And he comes in with it.
Yeah.
He leads with that.
Good husband.
You know what I mean? And he's like, why don't you go pour yourself a glass, go sit down. I got bedtime. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I am very blessed to have a partner in life who really, pushes hard, but also is the very first one to say, go sit down.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Good deal.
Yeah, this is some good stuff that you guys are sharing with us. I'm loving it. I want to talk a little bit about the challenges of taking care of yourself. I know Dian has mentioned physical exercise, taking care of the mental, napping, and Kim with you mentioned quiet time was important, and Kelli has your power walks, and Wendy the massages and the manicures. Are there any challenges to fitting in those activities that you indulge in to self-care?
I find that the solution oftentimes is to put it on the calendar and make it non-negotiable time. And I actually started that before I retired. As Kim knows, Altria had an on-site gym. And they encouraged you to use it, but at the same time, of course, you had multiple responsibilities. But I put time on my calendar at work, and it was non-negotiable, and that was when I would go and exercise. And so it was blocked as a meeting, and so I didn't, most times didn't have meetings scheduled to overlap that. Of course, always exceptions to every situation, but I carried that practice forward when I retired, and so there are certain times on my calendar that are just non-negotiable, and that helps. Nice. I still have to learn how to say no. And not allow things to encroach on my time. So I'm really working on that. But putting it on the calendar makes it real versus just saying, I would like to, or I think I'm going to do something. You put it on the calendar, just like you would put any other meeting, and make it your time.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Kelli, that's so true. Because I even think about, when I was in the office, would have my half day Fridays, me time. And I had to tell people and explain the fact that was my time. It wasn't, time to run to the grocery or go pick up the kids early or to, do things for others. It was really my time, whether that meant, coming home, getting some of those things off my mental to-do list so that I could rest, or, doing my nails or doing my hair, or just things that I needed to do for me to feel good and to recharge. And so since we've been home, I at the beginning was not as good at transitioning and bringing that forward. And so it really has been something that I've had to push back for, because it's really hard when you're in the house with everyone. Right. When I was at work and all the kids are at school, my husband's at his job, it's not as hard of a thing to do, but, giving yourself that priority is really important. And so, it may not be a full half day these days, but, even giving myself a few hours to do those things for myself is still really important.
Awesome. Yeah.
So for me, the biggest obstacle is less about the logistics of it, but more the mental piece for me. I'm a trauma survivor, and lots of people are. of
Oh
all
yeah.
different kinds of trauma.
Yeah.
But one of the things that happens as a trauma survivor is your self-worth and how you see what you're worthy of. And when your physical self was part of that trauma, there's a whole lot of guilt, shame, and self-worth all tumbling around in this really negative space. So how do you then translate to, I'm worthy of taking care of? This thing, this body that betrayed me, or this body that I'm angry at, is worthy of being taken care of. And so there was all of this stuff that had to be kind of unpacked to get to a space where I allowed myself to say I was worthy of being taken care of. I was worthy of that self-love, and I was worthy of, this body was worthy of having the attention paid to it in a positive way.
Right.
That for me, the biggest obstacle for me, and it does creep back up. Trauma is not something that you go to therapy, deal with once, and then move on.
Right.
It creeps back up. And so there are times where, I have a choice between a bowl of strawberries and a bag of chocolate. And I have to think about which one is going to be the better thing for me. Which one is going to be a better opportunity for me to care for myself. And so that for me is the biggest obstacle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wendy?
Yeah. I think when I first started working remotely, I found myself working really late hours. Although, waking up early, starting to work because my laptop was there, staying on it, late. And then I just kind of burned out. And so I realized that I needed to take time for myself. So I started walking, definitely. And then getting back into the things that I liked doing prior to COVID and, everyone being at home. So a routine where I focused on recharging myself. It was kind of hard at first because just the balance of working from home and kind of cutting off the work space and then getting into home space, and it's all in the same area. I found that just, quite a challenge. But now I just say, it's my time. I need to recharge. I'm going to go walk. I love the idea of putting it on the calendar. But now I just, when I'm ready to take a walk, I'm out.
Right.
When I want to get a massage, I want to do whatever, I just do it because for my mental state. And then, of course, with all that was going on last year, in the news, you just had to turn it off. I found myself just glued to the television 24/7 looking at the news. And that was quite a bit to take in. So just kind of unplugging from that. Of course, keeping a little bit of an eye on what was happening with the news, but unplugging and just recharging myself.
Yeah. Wow. And I want to make sure, as we're talking about different ways to take care of ourselves, and I too indulge in the pedicures before the pandemic and the massages and all of that. But also there are ways, if it's nothing but sitting down and reading a book. Reading is my favorite thing to do in the whole world. And so that was a big part of my self-care, just carving out time to sit down and read, or to just sit outside, to just get some fresh air, to take a walk. And so it can be whatever you need it to be, whatever you can afford for it to be, to make sure that's something that nourishes your spirit. But Dian, I want to return back to what you said earlier, and you were kind enough to share and brave enough to share about, experiencing trauma. So as you advanced on your journey of self-care, having been a survivor, are there things that you can say to others to help them as they navigate through that, to be kinder with themselves?
I think it just starts with there. It starts there with acknowledging, getting to a space where they can acknowledge that they are worthy of self-care. You know, we can always come up with reasons, trauma survivor or not, why we're not worthy of the time.
Right.
Right. So even if you can, sometimes it's a matter of normalizing it. It's a matter of saying everyone has these feelings of not being worthy, regardless of how they got there. Okay.
Right.
And that is not to minimize the trauma, but just to understand that everyone has these types of feelings for whatever reason. But even though those feelings exist, you have to set them aside and recognize that you are present and you are valued by people in your life, whether it be the person you've chosen to spend your life with, or your mother, or your best friend, or, you know, or even just the dog that wags its tail when you walk in the door and adores you. You are valued. And therefore, because someone else on this planet values you, you are worthy of taken care of.
Wow.
If you can't find it in yourself, which some people can't, and that takes some time and it takes some therapy and it takes a lot of effort to get to. For some people, they can't find it in themselves and they do have to be externally motivated, then okay, go with that. You have to meet people where they are. Right. And so I meet people where they are and say, if you can't find it within yourself to find a reason to see yourself as being valued enough and worthy enough to take care of, then look at the people who love you.
Right. Okay. Very good info. Yeah. So Kelli spoke about this a little earlier about her cues for I guess her body letting her know that she is too much, you know, she needs to take care of herself. I think you mentioned maybe feeling drained. For me, I can get a little snippy. I'm just being kind, but it's not nice when I go there because I mean, it's just, I'm operating on fumes and it's just not a pretty sight. And truth be told, my family and friends would tell you it's not the best sight on the regular days. So when I'm operating on fumes, it's really ugly. But so what kind of cues?
But well, not to just put you out there, but we really just had one of those such days, right?
Okay, that's between us. Okay, and that's not the topic for right. Okay.
I digress.
And the sad thing is she's telling the truth. But anyway, so what because Kelli mentioned that earlier, that surely, you know, how can you tell, like, you know what, I gotta take a break. I need some time. So what are you hearing and feeling from your body, your spirit, that lets you know that's what's going on?
Well, I'll add a little bit more to what I said earlier. You know, in addition to kind of like the physical fatigue, I get what sometimes I call brain fog, or CRS. We all know what that stands for. And you know, almost 60, you attribute some of that to being mature, but some of it I can just tell. I just have too many things on my brain at one time. You know, the computer cache, the memory's full, and I have to do a Control-Alt-Delete. I gotta let it go.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, things it's just become too much. Because I can't keep anything straight. I can't retain from. It feels like, you know, I'm not able to retain, and I'm like, I know I can't be that. I just said that. Now I don't. You know, it just I feel too confused. So that's when I know it's time to take a step back.
Okay.
Kelli, that's so true. And I would not attribute it to age. I think that it really is a sign of overload.
Yeah.
You do just get to the point where, you know, if you're fortunate, you listen to those initial cues, whether it be just being drained and tired and the brain fog. I was not one that necessarily listened to all those initial cues. And so it does take a physiological impact on your body. I ended up feeling really sick. And and couldn't understand why. I, was super tired, but had, couldn't sleep at night. And so I just couldn't understand what I was going through. And so, come to find out, a lot of that is triggers of stress. So, I always tell folks, like, don't be like me, listen to the early cues. So that you don't end up with your body's going to tell you one way or the other. So listen to the early
You're
ones.
right about that.
You don't have to get to the later ones where it takes you out and says, go lay yourself down because you can't physically get up anymore.
Yeah.
And that's very true, Kim. I was also going to share, I think it was 2018, I actually had a mini stroke. And for people that know me, I have always been, healthy, exercise, but it was really all stress related. It was just after retiring, but I was caring for my mother-in-law who lived with us at the time. She had dementia. And so that was a tremendous responsibility, and just still motherhood and all the things that go along with that. And I think it was just a culmination of things, and it happened. And I was blessed that I really had minimal impacts from it, but that was kind of really the big aha moment for me, to let me know that I had to step back, I had to stop, I had to release, or, something more serious could happen. So.
That is right.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, like Kim was saying earlier, I was not looking or identifying these cues that I was starting to burn myself out. So like I said earlier, I was working early, getting off late. And then I got into this habit of watching TV late and then really sleeping. And then I started finding myself, not recalling anything, same that everyone was saying, not recalling, and just, the stress of everyday life. I was just really finding myself being, very sharp with people. And then, I realized I just needed, like I said earlier, just to unplug, just kind of step back, stop staying up late, realizing that it's, Monday through Friday, it's a work day. So I really need to go to bed early just because I'm at home and I can get up a little bit later. I needed to balance things out and just really get into more of a routine and not just, work. So,
Yeah.
Dian?
Well, I was hesitant to say because I'm a lot like Lou. I get real snippy. I get very cranky. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm the mother of 2 small children, so I speak in small children terms a lot. But one of the things we have a book that's called "Is Your Bucket Empty?" And we use that language a lot in our house about our bucket being empty. And my son will say, "Mommy, is your bucket getting close to being empty?" And I'm like, or, when they're pushing me to my last nerve, I'm like, look, my empty's just about empty. Okay. Y'all need to do what I asked you to do. And so,
I love that.
Or my son will, my daughter and my son have even said to me, "Mommy, my bucket is empty. And I don't feel like doing that right now."
Oh, that's good.
And it's like, all right, well, that's fine. You still have to do it eventually, but that's cool. You can take 5 minutes. You know what I mean? So I'm hopefully teaching them to recognize the cues, but I get real cranky.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's the same for me. I have a little bit of each of each one of the things that you guys have shared that are cues for me. I get a little cranky. I forget things, and when we first came home, somebody mentioned turning off the laptop or something, or working all day. I would actually sit at my desk and work all day and take my laptop with me to bed. So I would get tired of sitting physically, And then I would go and I would sit up in my bed on the laptop. So now I treat my laptop like it's a desktop. It doesn't move. I leave it on the desk and I go upstairs to my bedroom. I don't take it there. So that I can properly unwind at night and have a good night rest. Because what that did for me, having that laptop on my lap prior to going to sleep, I never shut that off in my mind. And so consequently, I didn't have a good night's rest because I was still thinking about whatever it was I was working on, So now I sleep well. I would like us to transition now. This is going to be our last question. I want you guys to think about and share some advice that you might give to other women about the importance of self-care.
I was just going to say that I think we've already touched upon the first point, which is making sure that you value yourself and know that you are worth the time. And not feeling guilty at all about taking the time. And then the second thing I would advise is finding the thing or the things that really bring you joy and doing those things.
That's a good one.
And that really will feed your self-care. And it can be, it can be anything, whether it's physical, the exercise, if it's crafting, I like to craft. If it is, whatever, reading, I also like to read. Lou mentioned that. Whatever that activity is that you feel really brings you the most joy, do that and make that a part of your routine, whether it's weekly or what, the frequency that you feel you can best manage, but that's what you do.
Yeah.
I love it, Kelli.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I would say is that self-care is really, let's call it our superpower, right? It's that thing that allows us to, inspire and empower others. It's the thing that allows us to accomplish the things that we've all accomplished. And it's really how we show up in the world. And so, if we put that level of appreciation on it, that we can love ourselves and that, to Dian's point, we're worthy of it. It's really that critical. There's so many things that we can do or things that we can be when we really give that level of priority to the care of ourselves and the way that we love ourselves.
Nice advice, Kim.
So
love it.
One of the things that I would say is that I think sometimes we just need to give each other permission to not be okay. It's okay to not be okay sometimes.
Yeah.
And you hear that phrase, pity party. Well, I like to think of it this way. Pity party for one. I make myself a reservation for a table of one. And I go sit myself down and I have my little pity party, whatever that is, whether it's sad or mad or whatever else I'm going to feel. And I luxuriate in that feeling, just like when you go to a restaurant, you luxuriate in that time and you indulge in whatever it is you're going to indulge in. But just like at a restaurant, you can't stay there. You can't sit there all night. So when my time's up, I write it off and I set it aside and I get up and I keep it moving. Because
Girl,
you
better
can't stay stuck
preach
there. So it's like, pity party for one. Go ahead, have your pity party. Feel whatever feelings you're going to feel, luxuriate in it, acknowledge it. And it doesn't mean when you get up from the table, you forget about it. Because just like when you go to a restaurant, you remember the experience. You remember what it was like when you were there, but it doesn't, you can't stay there. So I would encourage people to just be okay with not being okay sometimes.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Well, I just think it's one thing about we ladies, we just need to make sure that we know that it's okay to take care of ourselves. Don't feel guilty about taking that time each day or each week to just go to a room. And I've talked about a massage. My massage is not going to an actual masseuse at this point. I have a little chair and I can sit in it and, it has a little insert and I just have the little switch and it gives you the little body massage. That's what I do now. It's relaxing. It's, takes me away from the daily stress. And just doing and taking time for myself just for a few minutes, an hour or whatever, just to relax and recharge. And so just, I would say, just not feeling guilty about taking care of yourself.
Right. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, I tell you, you have all offered some very, you've engaged in some enlightening conversations on this topic, and we appreciate it. And I know that it's going to be a benefit to our listeners because, as I said, and I didn't say it just by way of flattering you, it's the truth. You're all accomplished and you're doing well. And, we're not to minimize that. And that's part of the journey, is sharing what we've learned so that others can benefit from our experiences. So that's what Earrings Off is about. So again, thank you all so very much for joining us today at our community table on self-care. Thanks for joining us. Take good care and have a wonderful day.